For those of you who don't know, this is the original school bell, this being the village school. I've also discovered, as you will hear later in my talk, my bit of the talk, it was William Ackland who actually made this handle for his bell. Out of boxwood. Yes. So I was very pleased to discover that little bit of the archive. Before we start, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you could come. We've been waiting for this for a long time. We've been working towards it for a long time. So I think it's actually been about 10 years in the making, because our first archive book we received back in 2010, probably about the same time as the Heritage Group started. And here we are 14 years later, still with the group going strong, thanks to all of you. Before we start, I'd just like to draw your attention to our next meeting, which is in February. In March. Chris Close from the Collie Weston Historical and Preservation Society is going to come and do a talk about the discovery of Collie Weston Palace. I think some of you might have heard some of this before. I think, yes, great.
I'm in the Collie Weston History Society.
Yes.
But they keep adding bits.
We keep yes.
Yeah.
And I believe there is to be another archaeology excavation
I think so, yeah.
in March, and Chris has said that he will be able to tell us about it. So, I mean, it's only bits of stone wall, isn't it? But there's a whole lot more to the story. And of course, the link with West Deeping is that Collie Weston Palace was, for many years, it was the main residence of Lady Margaret Beaufort, who also owned the manor of East and West Deeping.
Yeah.
She never lived here. She never lived in West Deeping Manor. She lived at Bourne as a child, in Bourne Castle, and she lived for many years at Collie Weston. That was her main investment, if you like, apart from her other stately homes around the country. So we're looking forward to that. It's on March the 5th. And this is an evening one, but hopefully the evenings will be a bit lighter by then. So I do hope you'll be able to come to that. We have got a couple of outings planned for the summer. We've got an outing to Northborough Manor Castle, which was to have been in May, but is now in July. Even better for the weather and the gardens, hopefully. Is that it? Have I forgotten anything?
What dates?
The date of that one, I think it's July the 8th. I'll look it up to let you know before the end. But you've all come to hear Jane and John, not me. I am going to just start, if you wouldn't mind turning the light out, Margaret, thank you. I am just going to start by saying that William Ackland's name was actually quite familiar to me from looking after all the parish archives for several years, because of course he was the clerk to the parish council, and that's how I started out really, as the village archivist, if you like, having all the records of the parish council. So we've got big minute books. I haven't brought those with me today, similar to this. He was actually the clerk to the parish meeting, which was in place before the parish council was formed in 1919. So we were actually given what I thought was an incredibly valuable archive on its own, his ledger. In the front it was pretty boring, it just had names of customers and amounts. But in the back there was a comprehensive listing of all the burials that he'd been responsible for the period 1929 to 1961. Well, he died in 1969 at the age of 84. So he was still going strong into his 80s. And this resource was fantastic for adding to our details of burials, deaths in the village. And, you know, for some of the people, we've even been able to put faces from our photographs to these records of their burial. So we thought that was the only surviving account book. The accounts actually go from 1927 to 1934. But then 6 years later, Jean Baxter, Jane and John's mother, had a bit of a clear out, I think, didn't she?
I think it was probably me who said
Oh.
she'd got to clear something out, yes. What's this? It's Grandad's books. What do you need those for?
And through John Hobson at Stamford Town Hall, he keeps the archives there, who knew about my interest in the local history, very reluctantly admitted and contacted me and said, would you like these books? We really think they ought to come to you if the Baxters agree. And we were given a consignment. I think it was probably about 4 books like this from the 1950s and 1960s. And that was where we started to see all this detail of his customers. And people like Maura Small, who've lived in the village since she was born here, actually recognised the names, including her uncle and her grandfather's name in some of these accounts, in houses that he had owned, houses in the Row, for example, the cottages in the Row. So she had a good look at those, but I was obviously busy with other things. I didn't pay too much attention. And then, so having shown them to a few people, so I just need to refer to my notes a second. When Jane was clearing out her mother's house again, when both your parents
Yes.
were going into Braeburn Lodge,
Yeah, which is 2.5 years ago, yeah.
is it really? Jane contacted me and brought a whole cardboard box full of the remaining books that you see here. Well, I mean, I was over the moon, but I realised this was a serious project and I needed serious help. So we actually advertised sessions in the Red Lion on a Wednesday afternoon. It was only tea and biscuits, I hasten to add. Well, lunch sometimes. And several people who fancied spending an afternoon in the pub came, and we got all the books out. And so there are several people here today. I can see Avril and Jean and Jennifer. There were a couple, Judy Rasmussen as well, who sat there. We honestly didn't really know what we were doing to start with, did we? We weren't quite sure what we were looking for, so we just had a look. And we realised that there was such a depth, a richness of detail, and everybody sort of devised their own projects. So Judy, for example, knowing that I'd already done basically 1919 in my book, West Deeping Remembers 1919, she took 29, 39, 49, 59 and did a really statistical analysis of it, really, and her pieces of work are dotted around with the appropriate volumes. Avril is really still going, aren't you?
Yes, I've still got some to finish when this rush is over, and I will finish it.
And one of Avril's chosen projects was to look at the notebooks, the ledgers, which had copies of letters that William Ackland has written as parish clerk. So that one with the very flimsy pages over there, and then there's another one, book 7, which is what you're currently working on, and it's all indexed to the customer.
It with the
And
minutes, the
so-
parish council minutes.
the box of books that I was carrying down to the pub was getting even heavier with the parish council minutes every week as well. But it is a work in progress, and Jane being available at the moment, because on fairly regular visits to your parents, sadly your father passed away last year, didn't he?
Yeah.
But
At 97, on his 97th birthday.
Oh.
But your mother she was hoping to be here, or it was a possibility that
Yes,
she would
yeah.
be here today, but we decided
It was probably a bit much for her, because she's also 97 and beautifully looked after in Braeburn, in Deacon St James. So, you know, but anyway, I think we're going to have a little video, hopefully, that we'll be able to sort of show to Mummy in Braeburn.
Yes, she has lost a lot of memory, hasn't she?
She has,
Unfortunately. But
She'd probably say, "Who's William Ackland?"
I just need to get this